I'm doing it. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not at all confident, and 10 being totally confident, where do you feel you are with your confidence with crosswind landings? So those of you that are 4 and below, raise your hand. Okay? And 5 and above, raise your hand. Excellent. Okay. Good. That's the question we asked prior to our training session. I asked it before and after. And I'd like to see that number, that confidence number go up. I haven't had anybody ever have it go down. All right. Talk about getting sick on the start of a flight.
This is yours now.
Get your bloody aileron down. He's got no bloody aileron down. That's key, right? On the rollout, that's key. It is on the landing as well. So framing the crosswind problem. The first thing is, it's the #1 weather-related cause of accidents. Year by year, This is a graph showing it up to 2006 from 95. The yellow is tailwind, red is gusts, crosswinds are in the blue. So each year they're contributing very much to those accidents. Is there anybody in the room that's gone off the runway in a crosswind? This is an interesting slide here because 90% of the accidents are in crosswind components that are 9 knots or less. Isn't that amazing? So we're not going off the runway in really strong crosswind component winds. We're not using proper technique with the lighter winds. Richard Collins of Flying Magazine said it's the hardest thing to do to learn in aviation. I would agree with that. It's the only flight requiring assertive control of the flight controls, right? We're told, hey, be gentle with those things, do a nice gentle turn. But in a crosswind landing, you've got to be assertive. You need that airplane to point the right way, right away. Also, it's cross control. Well, we're taught, oh, don't cross control. You got to keep that ball in the middle. Oh, except during crosswind landings, when you're low and slow to the ground. Well, I'll talk about that a little bit. Quick reactions required. If you're not lined up and you're moving, you've got to get the changes in there. Good visual skill. Little time to succeed, a little bit off the runway. You know, you don't have a lot of time to succeed. Going off the runway can be expensive, and there's this negative transfer thing. So the inventor of this Xwind device had a client who wanted his 13-year-old daughter to know how to land the airplane in case he had issues. So he took her out, taught her. She was the easiest, best crosswind lander he ever saw. And he thinks because she didn't have a driver's license. So consider this. We're going along. I've had a right-hand crosswind. So my ailerons are turned into the wind, and I've got left rudder in. So I touch down, and I start going to the right, let's say. Well, if I do that, my natural tendency is to turn the wheel to the left, right? That's the worst thing you can do in a crosswind landing. You steer with your feet. So probably everybody in this room, when they were learning how to do crosswind landings, had that little tendency to change the position of the aileron. So it's tough to learn. It's tough to get that muscle memory to go fully deflected. And then what's really fun, in the CFI's worst nightmare, you've made a beautiful crosswind landing, you just touch down beautifully, and you go, and you're like, it's all over. No, it's not over. You got to fly that airplane all the way to the tie downs. Okay? So that's a negative transfer that we bring to our crosswind technique. It was interesting. We attended a talk last night with Rod Machado, and he was talking about the air coupe, that it was such an easy trainer, right? The air coupe doesn't have rudder pedals. It has coupled rudder and aileron, so you didn't have quite that same issue of negative transfer. So we also did a survey, and what we found was that you had, in order that scale of 1 to 10, in order to consistently answer 10, totally confident, I had to have 3,000 hours or more. So somebody might have said I had 2,500 hours and sat a 9 on there. So that's pretty amazing. 25% were confused about bank angle. Bank angle controls lateral position along the side of the runway. It isn't the ailerons. The ailerons establish that for you. Only one of the 26 questions was answered right, and it was kind of technical. It was if the wind changed direction, it would be perceived as a gust, and everybody got that. Privates are best at estimating crosswind component. This is the scary stuff right here. 64% of the respondents said the airplane should be forced on the ground. Get it on the ground. No, it's an airplane, right? It's very stable in the air. Keep it in the air. Fly it onto the runway. And then once you're on the right, if things are going bad, those pilots would stay on the ground. No, it's a high-speed tricycle. Those things are very unstable. Get it back up in the air. Go around. Okay, and then of course high experience, high test score, and high confidence. So this is a plot where they answered this quiz, the percentage. And you'd find this normal, right? Student pilots not very confident and didn't score very well, don't understand the concepts. And as the ratings and certificates progressed, the ATPs were really good. Something that came up in this slide. Again, are there any instructors in here? Wow, cool.
I did use that.
Is it? Okay. Well, you probably know crosswind technique. But look at this. Instructors were almost as confident as ATPs, but they sure didn't understand the concepts very well. A big gap there, and yet they're teaching us as students. So, not all of them are that way, of course, but it's kind of interesting, that particular data set. Do we get a lot of crosswind practice when we're getting our certificates and ratings? No. I have about 20 seconds worth of the good view of coming in a crosswind over the runway, touching down, and rolling out. So most private pilots have accumulated about 5 minutes of practice doing crosswind landings. Okay? Even the high ratings do not ensure that you've got a lot of practice. We avoid them. And then golf, think about it. Would you go out and hit a bucket of balls and then come out and try and shoot 18 holes with Tiger Woods? No. So we don't get this practice that we need. So that frames what our crosswind problem is. Let's talk a little bit about sort of that cross control thing. So I like to do a little aerodynamics review here. First of all, what causes an airplane to turn? Nobody's taken their exam recently. Right. Horizontal component of lift. So, in a coordinated turn, balls in the middle, we get the horizontal component equal to centrifugal force. In a steeper turn, we have some of that vertical component of lift. It's enough that it's pulling our weight down. We don't have enough of it. We have to pull back on the elevator, create additional angle of attack. Right? So what about adverse yaw? This is why we have the rudder in the first place. Adverse yaw. So, what is it? Well, I'm going to turn. How do you know which aileron is up in a turn? Yeah, so I'm seeing thumbs up, grab the wheel. If I'm turning to the left, that's the up aileron. My thumbs point to the up aileron. Okay, so in this case, I'm turning left. Other ailerons going down. What's happening to the wing in that case? We're increasing the curvature of that wing.
Yeah.
Right? When I do that, I increase lift. Cool. Wing comes up. What else do I increase?
Drag.
Drag.
Drag. There are a lot of drags in here. Which one?
Which wings?
Which drag? Who said that?
Induced.
Ah! Induced drag, right? Induced drag is created when somebody with lift is increased. And that's what it's, so that induced drag makes us yaw adverse to the turn that we want to make. So we have to lead that baby with a little bit of rudder to make a nice, coordinated, smooth turn. That's what adverse yaw is. We've talked a little bit about induced roll. That's cool. I love this. Slow flight. Everybody loves hanging by a string in slow flight, right? You're going along and your instructor says, okay, first of all, the stall warning is going in your ear, and you're going, okay, I want you to turn 90 degrees to the right, and you're going, you what? Well, don't use your aileron. Put in a little rudder pressure. That yawing motion makes the outer wing go a little bit faster, creating a little more lift. Nice gentle turn, go around, little opposite rudder to come out of the turn. That's induced roll. That's pretty neat. Well, what about these slips and skids, right? This is cross control. This is where we have issues. First of all, I'm going to teach you, you've got to be cross controlled to do the proper crosswind landing technique. But I want you doing a slip where the horizontal component of lift is greater than centrifugal force. The skid is the opposite way. Look what happens with load factor in a skidding turn. Okay? What happens when we increase load factor? Who said that? You said that. All right. Before I run out, though, these guys they'll enjoy them the most, even though they're not supposed to. See the problem. All right. So, when do we usually encounter a skidding turn?
Base to final.
Base to final. Okay. So let's look at why that is so dangerous.
Find themselves in is a stall spin while turning base to final. Unlike upsets that take place outside of the pilot's control, such as those caused by wake turbulence, a stall spin usually happens because of the pilot's lack of control or over-control. Let's take a look at a typical scenario. Perhaps due to an unexpected crosswind or pilot fatigue, rather than turning onto the extended center line on final, the aircraft overshoots the runway, and its here and otherwise uneventful flight goes terribly wrong. Rather than simply abort the approach and overshoot, the pilot tries to bring the nose of the aircraft around by pushing inside rudder. In a matter of only a few seconds, the mishandling of the controls causes the aircraft to roll quickly to the inside of the turn and into a low-level spin with tragic consequences. Seems improbable? How can a properly licensed pilot so poorly handle the controls so as to induce a spin at low level? Yet the statistics show that over and over this scenario continues to be one of the biggest killers among general aviation pilots. So let's take a look at the aerodynamic forces in more detail. The aircraft is on the base leg about to turn final. We know that as the aircraft slows, we're significantly closer to critical angle of attack than we were during cruise. During the turn to final, the pilot overshoots the extended center line of the runway. The exact cause of this is irrelevant. However, what is important to note is that the pilot generally stops rolling at around 30 to 45 degrees angle of bank, as that's the maximum bank many pilots are comfortable with. The pilot notices that the aircraft is still not lined up on final despite its efforts. Having reached the maximum comfort level for angle of bank, the pilot begins to push the rudder to the inside of the turn in an attempt to bring the nose around and point it towards the runway. Aerodynamically, this does nothing to help the pilot. In fact, all it does is begin to couple yaw and roll together and begin the process of inputting pro-spin controls. Yaw acts in an ear-to-ear movement relative to the pilot. Since the aircraft is now in a 45-degree angle of bank, pushing inside rudder does not bring the nose around, rather it causes it to drop down. To counter the nose drop, the pilot begins to add back or up elevator. This increases the angle of attack and the G-loading on the aircraft. The earlier input of yaw also has the effect of inducing secondary roll. To counter the increasing angle of bank, the pilot uses opposite aileron. The aileron on the inner wing now goes down in an attempt to increase lift on the inner wing and stop the inside roll. While this may seem like a slow, steady progression, in reality, it happens in only a few seconds. The pilot has unknowingly pulled the aircraft into a stall, and because of the pro-spin control inputs, has coupled yaw and roll together, creating the perfect case for an accelerated stall spin. Learning these concepts on the ground and having an understanding of how and why the stall spin happens is a great and necessary first step to avoiding this deadly mistake. Receiving proper training to avoid and then recover your aircraft in various upset scenarios will go a long way to getting you back on the ground safely. Remember, a go-around is always an option, and in many cases, the best one. Taking an extra 5 minutes to fly a circuit costs very little compared to the cost of writing off an aircraft and the lives of those aboard.
So in a slip, though, the upper wing is the wing that's going to tend to stall first. So if it drops, well shoot, that's part of the normal stall recovery technique, right? So, level those wings. Now, it's critical that either a stall or either a slip or a skid, airspeed control is key. Remember, keep it up. Keep your eye on that airspeed indicator all the way through these. I hate seeing this stuff at AirVenture, and it's happened here. People get distracted by all this traffic going on, and they lose sight of that airspeed indicator, and they end up with that. So now I'm going to tell you, let's do a slip, because they're pretty safe actually. So first thing is a forward slip. So what do we use a forward slip for?
Lose altitude.
Lose altitude. So I'm high on final approach. I'm going to push the rudder to stick the nose away from the direction I want to travel and use opposite bank to keep me going along the way I want to travel. And so I stick this fuselage into the relative wind and create a whole boatload of parasite drag that makes me drop quickly without really increasing airspeed. Now you need to keep that nose down. You need angle of attack management during this. So I had a fun time. One of my instructors made me do one of these for about a 30-mile jaunt between one airport and another. My legs were on fire, but it proved the point. You also burn a lot of gas in the 172 when you do that, because it's a full throttle maneuver if you want to stay level, right? Okay, the side slip is really close to the same thing aerodynamically. The thing is that we've got air coming this way, right? So our direction of movement in the air is toward that direction. We would be crab, and now we want to take the rudder and we want to point the nose in the direction that we want to travel over the ground. Remember, the forward slip was away, side slip towards. And then we have to have opposite aileron, opposite bank angle to control the lateral position. A crab. The crab is really stable, right? Airplanes love crabs. I like Dungeness crab. I don't know what they like. In any case, we're going to point our nose in the wind. I don't need to have any aileron movement or rudder movement except if there are changes in the air. So it's a very stable platform. Airplanes love stability. So what we're going to use this for is I'm going to turn final approach and I'm going to go into a crab. And I'm going to look at the crab angle against the center line of the runway. And you know what that's going to tell me? Visually, it's going to tell me the crosswind component I'm facing, at least up there. And as I come down, the winds will typically lessen themselves, so I'll get a little less crab angle. So that's a visual thing. That's part of the visual thing that is so important for crosswind landings. So let's go into some concepts. First of all, what's a crosswind? Well, it's that vector of the wind that's working perpendicular to the runway, or to your airplane if it's lined up properly. That's all it is. Now I thought, well, what about total wind? You know, what's the big deal about total wind? I'd love to have a 30-knot headwind right down the runway. So this graph sits here and it says wind velocity here, wind angle here, here's 30 and 0 right down the runway. That's cool, I like that. I'm going, what, 25 knots on when I touch a 172 down? Oh wait, I gotta turn right on the taxiway. Oh, 90 degrees, I'm in the danger zone, right? If you don't have your flight controls in the proper position in this danger zone, you're asking for trouble. So this is showing 15 knots or more. And I would say, probably 10. Maybe even a little bit less. In fact, for practice and honing that muscle memory, almost any wind, you want to have those flight controls in the right position. Okay? Now when you're coming in, you've been playing around, you're coming into a busy airport, and you get the ATIS, and the ATIS says, there you have the active runway and the winds. And so you reach back behind the seat next to you and pull out the POH, because you want to know the crosswind component, and you look at the really ugly black and white version of this to come up with the crosswind component. Who does that in this room? Yeah, nobody. You wouldn't have gotten one of these if you raised your hand. All right, so I want to make it easy. I love things that make it easy on me, and this is one of them. If the wind is 30 degrees off the runway, the crosswind component is half, okay? So I have a saying, 30 degrees is half. And I want you all to say it with me. Ready? 30 degrees is half. Okay, let's raise it up one more time. 30 degrees is half. Now I have a recommendation for you. When you get the wind in comparison, say 30 degrees is half. But don't have the mic keyed when you say it. All right. 60 degrees, consider it all. Oh, by the way, who in here before I said 30 degrees is half thought that it was 45 degrees? Nobody, everybody, oh, I'm not teaching any. Okay, 45 is not half. 30 degrees is half. 45 is about 75%. Okay, this is a trigonometric function. Right? We all love trigonometry in this room. Okay, yeah. Okay, so 60 degrees is actually about 90%, but I like to go all the way up because it makes it easy. So I use a little combination here. 30 degrees is half plus, I think, in sixths as well. For every 10 degrees the wind is off the runway, the crosswind component is 1/6 of the wind. So 10 degrees is a sixth, 20, 30 degrees is half, 60 is all. So this helps me hone in a little bit. Do I really need to know exactly what that crosswind component is? Is it going to matter if it's 15 or 16 knots? No. I want to be somewhere near there. It's about 15. So that's great. So let's go through a couple of examples. First is Astoria, Oregon. Anybody been there? Beautiful place along the Columbia River at mouth. And so we've got winds there 230 at 18 gusts to 30. Okay, and I've got runway 826 and 1331. What's my preferred runway?
26.
26. Okay, now I ask you, what did I just say for crosswind component?
Half.
30 degrees is half. So what is the crosswind component?
It has to be in magnetic first.
9 to 15.
Okay? Forget the 9.
15.
Go with 15, right? Be conservative, go with the high number, because that's what you might face.
I've got a question, it has to be in magnetic.
Ah! You're just way ahead here. What about Magvar? Did you know that printed reports are given, winds are given relative to true north? Right? Now we know that with winds aloft reports because we're used to, you know, that flight planning, we have to go and do that, pull out your little whiz wheel. But you don't know that about METAR. So how many of us are flying glass cockpits? Anybody with weather? Or your iPad with ForeFlight and a Stratus. So you're looking at a METAR, it's a printed report. So, does this make a difference? Astoria is 16 degrees east. East is least, west is best. Okay, so we're going to subtract. Now I've got 215 at gust 30, about 75% is. Now I'm at 22.5 knot. Did that go over my personal maximum? Very possibly could have. Okay? So, let's do another one. Caribou, Maine, 32012. I have runways 119 or 1129, or what's the preferred runway? 29. What's the crosswind component?
Got a METAR.
30 degrees is half. That's where I start.
6 knots.
So 6 knots. Ah, what about Magvar, right? I'm picking the coastal areas. Magvar 18 degrees west, so just about all 12 knots. That could make a difference for you. If you get AWOS, or ATIS or tower, those are verbal reports. Those are given to you relative to magnetic north. That's the difference. Okay? In our phases of flight, we have taxi, takeoff, and landing. I'll talk a little bit about each. First, we love this diagram, right? Use up aileron on right hand wing and what? Make it easy. Who knows the easy way?
Dive to the wind.
Okay?
Climb into the
Or either, well, I'm going to turn into the wind, I'll climb into the wind in a tail dragger, or I'm going to dive away from the wind. So, quartering headwinds, turn in, quartering tailwinds, dive away in most of our bicycle gear. This is critical, you guys. If those winds are in the danger zone, you need to be able to see that and do that as you're moving around on the surface. If you don't, that gust come pick up that wing and take you right off the runway. Okay? So, a couple of things you can do. I've had students, I can't remember where the wind is going once I turn off the runway. So in this case, I'm going to say our runway is 27 and I've got winds here 230. So put an imaginary wind dot on there. When I have to turn right now I'm turned into the wind. That thing's going to dive away. That's going to come in this. That's the way to remember it. So you're going to dive away. And that's the easy way you can do this as you're moving around on the ground, all the way until you shut down, get tied down. The other thing that's kind of cool is this is sort of that crosswind component calculator. So if this were a wind at 20 knots from 230, this is all 20. Go here and I come kind of straight down. And I go, okay, well, maybe it's about 12, 13 knots. Just kind of quick. Okay? Takeoff. Everybody knows how to do a crosswind takeoff. Ailerons fully deflected into the wind. You're going to steer with your feet. Bring the power up as the controls gain effectiveness. You're going to lessen that. You're going to roll up, typically on one wheel, get up and crab away. And the beauty of that is we all know that, so if we flip that around, that's the crosswind technique for landing, right? Just the opposite. So, the most important tip that you can come away from today here is point your nose with your toes, right? Point your nose with your, okay, everybody's got to say it with me. Ready? Point your nose with your toes, okay? That's the key. You've got to use your rudder to point that nose down the extended center line. If you can't do that, go around. Do something different. It's key. And that means all the way approach, flare, landing. On the runway, if you can't keep that nose pointed down the runway with your feet, get back up into stability. Okay, second thing is, you bank for lateral position. We're going to use our ailerons to establish bank angle, but it's that bank angle that we're concerned about. So, I point my nose with my toes and I use opposite bank to stay on the center line laterally. If I need to go to the right, in this case, I'm going to increase bank, left, decrease bank. It's getting that visual in your mind that helps. And then fly the airplane, don't land it. You're going to fly it onto the runway so that it touches beautifully, and you just continue down that runway using all those techniques of control position for taxi. Phases to the landing. First, I want to talk about this debate, okay? Wing low versus crab and kick. You get this all the time. We only teach wing low for these reasons. It's a stabilized approach. Everybody know about stabilized approach, right? So the most successful landings always are preceded by good approaches. And it's got to be stabilized. So we go from a crab to wing low out a ways, and we establish the proper power and pitch in a stabilized manner all the way in on the approach. I can teach this to everybody, all students, all privates, all commercials. Everybody can learn this technique. And The visual cues remain consistent. I'm going to point my nose with my toes. I'm going to have that landing point, that aiming point in the window, and I'm not going to let it move. Well, what happens with crab and kick is we're stabilized until the very last second, and then we put in the stuff and, all right. So, and it takes greater pilot skill. If you're flying a whole bunch, then you probably can do this. You've become one with the airplane and the wind, right? Greater pilot skill. Your visual cue, you're looking this way, and then all of a sudden I've got to kick this way, so my head's got to rotate right. I mean, it's not set up for a successful crosswind approach. So how do we do the approach? Well, what I want to do is get you time. Get you time to set up, set your aeronautical decision making, watch it all the way down. So make it a little bit longer final approach. Make it a little bit higher. This is, the dive and fly. If you're higher, you come down, you can use that slip, right? It's going to be a little higher drag over. Get in over the runway and then fly the runway a little bit. You'll come down through the turbulence. The winds are going to change a little bit, but you'll be able to see those. Come in a little faster, right? We want a cushion, especially with gusty winds. We want a cushion over stall speed. So that's a lot of POHs will say add half the gust factor. You know, look at your POH and make sure. So if the guys are flying big iron, I've seen all of the gust half of the steady state. Kind of interesting. But while you're approaching faster, never, ever, ever touch down faster, right? Don't be a high-speed control that high-speed tricycle thing. Stall horn, squeak of the wheel. Flaps, minimum necessary for field length. So that's what the Cessna POH says for 172. So if we're landing here at Lakeland Linder on the big runway, what do we need for flaps? Nothing. Okay, 10 degrees, sure. Short field technique, that's allowable. Now, Chuck flies these Cirrus all the time. The Cirrus in the manual says 100% flaps. It's 50 and 100%. Okay, and I'm kind of thinking, you know, I'm going to consider a go-around. What's a go-around? It's a takeoff, right? What if I've been on the ground or not? It's a takeoff. I want to configure the airplane for takeoff. So in the Cirrus, I only use 50% flap because I have been working on a song. It's called I've Got That Sinking Feeling, right? Going from 100% to 50% flaps or 30, full flaps in a Cessna up. So everything on the round end, everything else pretty much is normal. You're going to change your focal point from your aiming point down the runway. Maintain direction with drift. Really interesting, you know, this is a constant, infinite set of changes to rudder and aileron to bank angle to keep that on the runway. It's going to change, right? Ground effect's going to have a little change. The slower you go, you're going to have to increase those inputs. But otherwise, it's normal. Don't ever turn downwind. If you find yourself turning downwind, you're going to be off course very quickly. It's going to be very difficult to recover. Just go around. Your fuel management's great. You got plenty of gas to do that. Kind of what the round out looks like, and then the touchdown upwind wheel first, downwind wheel next. All the flight controls increase till you're fully deflected. When you're down on the ground and you're doing ground operations, there is no such thing as not being fully deflected with your ailerons. Okay? Never relax. Kind of what the touchdown looks like. And then after landing. So after landing, you'll have a little more weather vaning tendency. So you're going to need a little more rudder, and it's critical that you've got those ailerons fully deflected. That helps you maintain that directional control with the rudder, okay? And that side force actually becomes a little greater on the airplane. You've got more pushing on the side of the airplane. Minimal braking, but you can use differential braking if you need it to keep your nose pointed. And then watch out for that chart. So where do we make our errors? The common mistakes are drift, not controlling drift, base to final, getting ourselves in the skid, on final, and when touching down. How about an unstabilized approach? Not watching airspeed. Too much airspeed on touchdown, resulting in too much ground speed. And then this is very common. And excessive braking can be an issue, right? You want to have that friction on the wheels. Go around, be ready to go around all the time. Hand on the throttle. I learned power up, pitch up, positive rate, flaps up, gear up. Ooh, wait a minute. How many fly retract? Okay. One of the most common things, gear up landings are after a go around because you're out of your standard operation. Leave the gear down. It's not that much of a drag producer typically. And practice those. Set your personal maximums. Yeah, they're going to fluctuate. How much have you been flying recently? Have you been in challenging winds? So those will change a little bit. Go in the air, grab your CFI, and do forward slips and side slips along the runway, and then go seek out those silly crosswinds. Now, on the ground, I want to make you aware that there are devices, these crosswind training devices. And we have 2 of them in Denver. There's one up in South Carolina, or North Carolina at Fly Carolina. These things are the best things since sliced bread. Best way to learn technique because you're going to get more in an hour, more practice than people get in a lifetime of flying. And of course we can't go off. Yes, sir.
Can you put in a tail wheel program?
There's, most of the things are the same except for the landing sequence. So no, but it's all the same on a tail wheel except the after landing, really. So there's a tail wheel mode, but it's so squirrely on the ground it's ineffective. But everything else translates just fine. We teach tail dragger pilots all the time. Can't go off the runway, it's pretty inexpensive. I figured you'd save $2,000 in a typical flight lesson, and then it helps keep the muscle memory toned. I just want to show you a quick video of the one that we have at Centennial Airport in Denver. We're teaching hand, foot, eye coordination to a focal point with this device. Made by Redbird Flight Simulators. Two modes. There's a training mode, which is a continuous, never-ending runway. You just fly over that runway and you hone those skills with centerline. Then we dial up, you set crosswind component, left to right. You can set gusts, and you can set 2 turbulence levels if you really want to sweat. Now this is the landing evaluation mode. We start out 0.8 of a mile. I have you crab, get the crosswind component, and then go into a wing low. Fly the wing low all the way down. All this is honing those visual skills of seeing the bank angle, seeing the drift, seeing it quickly and addressing it. And then the after landing, She's touched down now, and you'll see she's going to fully or on deflection. If she doesn't, she'll go off one side or the other very quickly. So you don't need to see my ugliness on that. You've had enough. So when we get students on here, this is the kind of stuff we get. I love this because Jessica said my instructor was literally a gate at the improvement. And we hear that all the time. So we try and work with flight schools and instructors, and a lot of just individual pilots are the ones that say, hey, I need to look at this. This guy was going to quit. He was so frustrated. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the wind hardly ever blows in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So, and that's where he was based. And he came down and did a session with our lead instructor. And this guy, Donna, is a DPE. And he just loves it. So, it's really neat. There is one over at the Redbird tent. And I'm going to try and be over there around 3 o'clock this afternoon if you want to come out and kind of see. What we have is a building block approach where we're going to teach the forward slips are easier to learn first. And then we start adding wind, and as soon as you're doing those things and seeing that, that visual stuff, then we go to that landing sequence. It's pretty cool. Also, if at all you were thinking you'd like to come to Colorado for a vacation, add a day on, you might want to do one of our sessions and then combine it with Chuck doing a mountain trading session from Independence Aviation. And they're one of our training partners. And up here, our contact information. Feel free to give us a call if you guys do any Facebooking or Twittering. Like us, find us, follow us. And are there any questions? Yes.
What would you recommend precisely when you transition from crash to a slip on final?
That's a great question. And it pretty much depends on your skill level and where you're comfortable doing it. As with less skill, do it farther out so you can get used to it and have that stabilized approach quicker. Now, we're teaching, I kind of want to have you there by a half mile out, maybe a quarter mile out. But typically, as you gain experience, the closer you can come in.
So waiting till you cross over the threshold, you would not recommend?
No, that's true, because you're going to start having the impacts of ground effect as well as speed. So that's crab and cake, basically. Yeah.
Where do you put the center line from crosswind?
Right down the middle. Right down the middle of your sight. That's what it's for the visual.
Find something on your airplane that points like a rivet line or some visual cue on your airplane and align that with your center line.
Sometimes it's easier to keep it at a steady offset where you can see it typically on the left side.
Okay.
You got,
Well,
you can start getting the nose up and now, you know.
If it's straight down your field of vision, and you're in the left seat, you may be a little bit right of center line. The key is that think about going down a highway at highway speed, 70 miles an hour. If you're going down and the center line is right in your field of vision, you're going to detect any straying off that very quickly. Now, some people say, well, I like to line up on the downwind, pointing upwind. No, because the visuals aren't going to help you. They're changing too much. So, yeah.
I fly tail dragger, and one day I landed with the top all the way across. Got the tail down, everything's fine. All of a sudden, I felt that tail wheel start to skip, and thought hit me, and I want to ask you a question. What happens if I add power with the full rudder in? I'm not going to go flying, but I added a little power. Does that help? Is that what you do? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Any other? Yes, sir.
Again, tail draggers, what's your opinion for crosswinds, wheel or full stall landing?
Boy, I don't have enough experience with it to say. I would suspect that you're doing a full stall. I believe the gentleman at with Rick Stoll from up in Idaho, and that's what he recommends. I'll go with his. Thanks, everybody, for coming.